She showed him her FBI badge. He pulled a gun and laughed. 2 minutes later, he was the one in cuffs. Danielle Riggins pulled her car into a Shell station just off I-75 in Mon, Georgia. It was almost midnight. The yellow glare of the overhead lights washed her black Ford Fusion in a tired, flickering haze. She twisted the key to silence the engine and slumped back in her seat for a moment, massaging the bridge of her nose. It had been a 14-hour surveillance shift, and every part of her body begged her to clock out, get home, and collapse. She wore jeans and a loose gray hoodie. Nothing about her screamed federal agent at a glance. Her FBI badge was clipped to her belt, partly hidden by her hoodie. She kept it visible enough to avoid problems if someone happened to notice. But Mon wasn't the kind of town where you expected problems from your own side, or so she thought. The station was almost empty except for a red pickup truck idling at the far end by the air pump. Danielle didn't pay it any mind. She grabbed her debit card, ready to fill up and get moving, but then she saw flashing blue and red lights strobing across the rearview mirror. She frowned. No sirens, just lights. A patrol car rolled in slow and heavy behind her, crunching over loose gravel. She didn't recognize the department. Definitely local, though, not federal, not state. She reached instinctively for her badge to make sure it was more visible. The driver's door of the patrol car swung open, and a tall man in a dark uniform stepped out. He was thick around the shoulders, pale, probably in his mid-30s. His name patch read Lasker. His hand hovered near his holster as he approached her. Danielle rolled down her window halfway, already flashing her badge with 2 fingers. "Evening, officer," she said, trying to sound calm but firm. "I'm Special Agent Danielle Riggins with the FBI. What's the issue?" Laser's eyes flicked to the badge. He smirked like he'd heard a joke he didn't like. "Got a call about a suspicious woman sitting in a car," he said, voice sharp, already tilting toward hostile. "Mind stepping out of the vehicle for me?" Danielle blinked. Suspicious woman sitting in a car in a public gas station. "Sir, with respect, I'm an agent in the middle of an assignment. I can provide full ID if needed. There's no cause for a stop," she said, keeping her hands in clear view. But Lasker didn't back off. His hand slid fully onto his holster. "Now who heard me?" he barked. "Step out now." Danielle's heart kicked against her ribs. Her mind snapped to headlines she'd seen 100 times. Traffic stops gone wrong. Innocent people not making it home. She kept her voice measured. "I'm complying. I just need you to acknowledge who I am before we go any further." Lasker's smirk widened into something nastier. He unholstered his gun, pointing it straight at her windshield. People started noticing. A teenage boy getting Gatorade at the pump froze. A woman leaning against her own car pulled out her phone. Danielle lifted her hands higher, voice still low. "I'm a federal agent. I am armed and my weapon is holstered. I am no threat." But Officer Lasker didn't budge. In fact, he cocked the gun a little tighter, finger hovering way too close to the trigger. "I don't care who you say you are," he snapped. "Step out or I'll drag you out." Danielle's fingers tingled with panic. She refused to show. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a man itching to escalate. But she knew backing down now wouldn't save her, and it sure as hell wouldn't stop what was already in motion. Danielle Riggins had seen situations spiral before. She had spent 8 years in the Bureau, 6 of them undercover in some of the roughest corners of Florida and Alabama. She knew fear. She knew danger. But what clawed at her gut now wasn't fear of the streets. It was fear of someone who was supposed to be on her side. She kept her hands visible, palms out against the window. Lasker edged closer, gun raised, eyes darting around like he was waiting for a reason to fire. In those seconds, Danielle's mind flipped back through everything that had brought her here. Growing up in Little Rock, Arkansas, she'd watched her father, a quiet, proud Army veteran, get stopped in his own neighborhood more times than she could count. No weapon, no crime, just suspicion. Her mother used to keep a wallet full of laminated ID cards ready for him, just to make those moments end faster. Danielle had sworn she would be different. She wouldn't just carry a badge. She would make the badge mean something. But here she was, a black woman in jeans and a hoodie, sitting in a car. And suddenly, none of it mattered. From the corner of her eye, Danielle saw more people stopping to watch. Someone was filming now. She wanted to shout to them, "Keep recording, don't stop." But she couldn't move without risking Laser pulling that trigger. "Officer," she said again, slower, firmer. "I am Special Agent Riggins, FBI. My identification is on my left hip. My firearm is secured. I am reaching for nothing." Laser scoffed. D, like the title Special Agent, meant less than nothing to him. His stance widened. His free hand yanked at the door handle. "Out," he barked. Now Danielle didn't move. Instead, she made a decision. She was trained for this. She had walked drugs armed with nothing but a wire and her wits. She could handle one angry cop. "Sir, I am required by federal protocol to announce my identity and role before following a non-consensual command. You are escalating a lawful identification into a wrongful detainment," she said. The words, steady, clipped straight from the Bureau's handbook. Lasker leaned down, peering into the car, his lips curled. "You think flashing a fake badge and some big words makes you special?" he said. "You just another liar trying to play the system." Danielle's chest tightened, but she forced herself to stay still. She didn't blink, didn't twitch. This wasn't about protocol anymore. This was about survival. But deep inside, she knew that surviving tonight would take a lot more than words. And this man had already decided who he thought she was. Laser's face twisted, and without another word, he yanked open the car door with his left hand, still keeping the gun aimed in his right. The cold air hit Danielle like a slap. She raised her hands even higher, slowly shifting her legs out of the car, every move exaggerated to show she wasn't reaching for anything. "I'm exiting the vehicle as ordered," she said, voice clear, carrying just enough to be heard by the growing crowd. "I am complying." Lasker didn't acknowledge her. His eyes darted down to her belt where her badge gleamed under the station lights. "You think you're slick?" he said, voice dripping with contempt. "Got yourself a shiny little toy off the internet, huh?" Danielle didn't respond. She knew better than to argue. She simply stood there, arms raised, heart hammering against her ribs so hard it hurt. The woman filming muttered something to the guy next to her, something about it being obvious she was a Fed. But Lasker didn't seem to care. He circled Danielle like she was prey, then reached forward with one hand and ripped the badge off her belt. The badge clattered to the pavement. "Fake," Lasker declared loud enough for everyone to hear. His grin stretched so wide it looked painful. "Thought you could fool me?" Danielle kept her face neutral, but inside a wave of nausea churned. He didn't believe her. He didn't want to. He wanted her powerless. She risked a glance at the gas station clerk behind the glass. The man, mid-40s, heavy-set, wearing a faded Braves cap, was on the phone, calling 911. Maybe someone else had seen enough to understand this wasn't right. "Officer, please," Danielle said, carefully pronouncing each word. "You are interfering with a federal operation. I am requesting immediate contact with your supervisor." Lasker snorted. "You're not in charge here," he sneered. "You're not anybody." He shoved her back against the side of her car with one hand, patting her down rough and fast with the other. His grip was brutal, yanking at her pockets, her waistband. Danielle flinched but didn't resist. Resisting would get her shot. Resisting would give him the excuse he was dying for. "You're shaking," he said, smirking, patting her down again for effect. "Scared, huh? Should have thought about that before lying." A couple of kids in the crowd shouted something. Gee, too far away to make out. More phones were up now. Danielle prayed someone was smart enough to stream it live, because if something happened to her tonight, someone needed to have it on record. "I'm not resisting," Danielle said again, voice but steady. Lasker only laughed. "Oh, you will be." The words hung heavy in the night air, but unknown to Officer Lasker, his 2 minutes of power were almost up, and help was already speeding down the road toward them. Officer Lasker tossed Danielle's FBI badge onto the roof of her car like it was a piece of trash. "You really think you're fooling anybody with that dollar store crap?" he said, practically laughing now, voice loud and mean. "You people are all the same." Danielle froze at those last words. You people. It wasn't about suspicion. It wasn't about safety. It never had been. It was about what he saw when he looked at her, and what he refused to believe she could be. The crowd grew bolder now, sensing the wrongness of it all. A woman yelled out, "She's an agent, man. We can see the badge." A few others murmured in agreement, their phones capturing every ugly second, but Lasker didn't seem to hear them, or maybe he didn't care. He pushed Danielle harder against the car, twisting one of her arms behind her back roughly. "You're lucky I don't haul you in right now for impersonating an officer," he growled in her ear. Danielle stayed silent. She knew if she said anything else, he'd find a reason to fear for his safety, and then the story would end in blood. "Turn around," he barked, shoving her so hard her forehead almost hit the car mirror. Danielle's legs buckled slightly, but she caught herself. From across the parking lot, there was a sudden screech of tires. A black SUV, government plates, tore into the lot, lights flashing low. Two men and a woman in suits jumped out before it even stopped moving. One of them, a tall black man with a tight fade and a serious scowl, moved fast, flashing his badge high. "Federal agents," he shouted. "Drop your weapon. Step away from her now." Lasker turned, blinking like he couldn't process what he was seeing. "What the hell? I said, drop it." The agent barked again, already pulling his own sidearm, but keeping it low, steady, professional. A second SUV pulled up behind the first one. More agents spilled out. The bystanders gasped, pulling back, but keeping their cameras rolling. For the first time that night, Officer Lasker hesitated. His hand twitched. The barrel of his gun dipped a little. Danielle stood there breathing hard, watching him fight with the reality he couldn't deny anymore. But even as he finally started to lower his weapon, Danielle knew this wasn't over yet. It was only just beginning. Officer Laser's mouth opened like he wanted to argue, but nothing came out. He finally lowered his gun, the barrel clinking awkwardly against the side of his holster as he tried to resecure it. The federal agents closed in fast. The lead agent, Agent Marcus DeWitt, kept his voice sharp and loud enough for the Kames recording every second. "You are hereby ordered to disarm and step away from Special Agent Danielle Riggins," he said, pulling a set of flex cuffs from his belt. "Failure to comply will result in immediate use of force." For a second, it looked like Lasker might fight it. His hand hovered at his hip, his eyes darting toward the crowd, toward the agents, toward Danielle, like he could still somehow twist this to his advantage. But then he saw it. The agents surrounding him weren't just random suits. They knew exactly who Danielle was, and they weren't about to let him play the hero in a story he wasn't supposed to be in. Agent DeWitt gave him no more chances. In 2 quick strides, he grabbed Lasker's wrist, twisted it behind his back, and snapped the flex cuffs into place. Laser stumbled forward with a grunt, his face burning red. "You can't arrest me," he barked, straining against the cuffs. "I'm a cop. I was doing my job. You detained a federal agent without cause, pulled a firearm without lawful justification, and obstructed a federal operation," DeWitt said calmly, like he was reading from a manual. "You're under arrest, pending full investigation." The crowd erupted. Cheers, shouts. A couple people laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that carried all the way across the gas station lot. Danielle leaned against the side of her car, finally letting herself breathe. Her knees trembled from the adrenaline still surging through her, but she forced herself to stand tall. She wouldn't give Lasker the satisfaction of seeing her broken. One of the agents, a woman with close-cropped hair and quick hands, picked up Danielle's badge from the roof of her car and handed it back to her with a quiet, "We've got you." Danielle nodded, blinking hard against the burning in her eyes. Lasker kept shouting as the agents led him toward one of the black SUVs, but nobody was really listening anymore. The narrative he thought he controlled had slipped away from him, and the cameras caught every second of it. But even with Lasker cuffed, Danielle knew the real battle wasn't just about one night at a gas station. It was about a much bigger fight that would take a lot longer to win. The gas station lot cleared slowly after that. Some people hung around, still filming, hoping to catch one last moment. Others simply shook their heads and left, talking low among themselves about what they just witnessed. Danielle sat on the curb, her hands steady now, but her mind racing. Agent DeWitt crouched beside her, keeping his voice low and gentle. "You did everything right," he said. "You stayed calm. You survived. Survived." That word hit her harder than anything else had tonight. In the bureau, they drilled you on survival, tactical awareness, threat assessment, split-second decisions. But nothing prepared you for the exhaustion of surviving while being seen as the enemy by the people who were supposed to be allies. She nodded stiffly, tucking her badge back onto her belt where it belonged. Across the lot, Lasker sat slumped in the back seat of one of the federal SUVs, head down, no more fight left in him. His radio squawked uselessly on the ground near the curb where it had fallen during the scuffle. A local sheriff's supervisor had finally arrived, a stocky man with thinning hair and deep lines etched into his forehead. He didn't even try to defend Lasker, just shook his head, murmured something about pending investigation, and agreed to take custody once the feds finished paperwork. Danielle watched it all with a strange hollow feeling in her chest. There would be reports, hearings, maybe even charges if the bureau pressed hard enough. The body cam footage would be pulled, dissected, broadcasted on the evening news until people picked sides, those who saw her as the victim and those who would still find a way to blame her. She knew the cycle too well, and she was tired. But when Agent Ditt offered her a ride back to the field office, she shook her head. "I'll drive," she said quietly. I need to finish the day on my own terms." He hesitated, then gave a small nod. Danielle climbed back into her car, hands steady on the wheel. She pulled out of the gas station lot without looking back. She didn't need to see Lasker again. She didn't need to see the crowd. She had survived. And tomorrow, when the world saw what happened, maybe someone somewhere would believe her story. Not because it made the news, but because they knew it could have been them too. But as she merged onto the highway, Danielle knew survival wasn't the victory. Living with dignity was, and that's exactly what she intended to keep doing.